Okay, we are live on Facebook. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Ty Edwards with Women for Kansas Northeast Chapter, and we are here for a Kansas Senate District 20 forum. And we will just start right off. We're going to do 3 minutes for the answers for each candidate. Let me grab my timer while I say that. Okay, and we will, I gave you the order, but I'll also help prompt you on whose turn it is. We're going to have 8 questions, and then we'll have closing remarks, and we'll fold introductions into question 1. Okay, everybody ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me get my timer here so I can keep track. All right. Okay, so question 1 is, please state your name, what is your background, and why would you be a good choice for the 20th district? And Rachel, we'll start with you.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me and hosting this opportunity. I really appreciate it. So yes, I am Rachel Willis, and I'm running for Kansas Senate District 20. I'm a 5th generation Kansan, and I grew up on a small wheat farm in central Kansas. And from a young age, I've just had a strong passion to help people and to serve Kansas. So I'm a proud Topeka and Washburn alum. I have over a decade experience in the nonprofit management world, specifically educational nonprofit. And I really have the ability to bring people to the table to work for the betterment of the good, right? Of the community and our district and the state. So I'm running today because Senate District 20 needs a strong leader who will really work to continue to move Kansas forward, ensuring that all Kansans have the opportunity to live their lives to the fullest and to create a bright future for the next generation. So what does that mean, right? That means I'm going to support fair, common sense economic policies, as well as work to improve the quality of life through access to affordable healthcare, continued investments in education at all levels, investments in the comprehensive transportation plan, and long-term strategies to protect our environment for future generations to come. It sounds like a lot of work, and no doubt that it is, but I'm up for that challenge. I'll bring a fresh perspective and an understanding of the struggles of the average Kansan living in the district and what they're facing right now, because I'm living them too. I will support policies to relieve these burdens and help make Kansas a better place to work, raise a family, and live. Thank you.
Brenda?
I always have to remember to unmute myself.
Oh.
Well, thank you so much for hosting this forum this afternoon. My name is Brenda Dietrich. I'm a lifelong Kansan, and I'm running for the 20th Senate District. I'm the former superintendent of the Auburn-Washburn School District here in Southwest Topeka. I retired in 2015 after 40 years in public education, 19 years as a superintendent. I'm currently serving in the Kansas House. I'm in my 2nd term. I represent the 52nd district, which a fun fact is that the 52nd sits almost entirely within the 20th Senate District. So there are 32 precincts in that House district, 96 in the Senate district. So you can kind of see how that all fits together. So I think I have a pretty good idea of some of the issues of my constituents, or at least a third of them in the 20th Senate District. You know, I truly believe in service above self. I've been a Rotarian for many, many years, and I really see myself as a public servant, not a politician. I'm a pretty independent thinker. I'm running for the 20th Senate District for the same reasons I ran for the House of Representatives in 2016. It's to restore faith and trust in the legislative process. It's to bring common sense solutions to complicated issues in order to create a better Kansas. I love Kansas. I've always been actively involved in the community. I serve on a lot of boards and have over the last 19 years that I've lived here. I see myself as a principle-centered public servant who's going to work hard to keep the state on the right track. That's why I ran in 2016. I've got a proven track record of serving my students and families and staff members and my communities. I've got 30 years of real world experience managing a budget, being accountable to my families, being a good steward of our taxpayer dollars. I believe that my goal is to always work collaboratively and respectfully with everyone. You have to be able to arrive at reasonable and rational decisions in a very complex environment that we have here. So I serve with honor and integrity, and I always, at the end of the day, hope that I've made good public policy and that I've added value, and that I've been a good representative for the folks, the 70,000 constituents in the 20th Senate District. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the second question, we'll start with Brenda. How will you work across the aisle to solve challenges facing the legislature? And if applicable, how have you done this in the past?
Thank you for that question. So when I came in 2016, there were 46 members in the House, new to the House. And so we went to a training at the Kansas Leadership Center in Wichita, and we found lots of commonalities, even though we were, there with Republicans and Democrats, we were all in the same room together. And from that, we decided when we came to the legislature in January of 2017 that we would form bipartisan freshman caucus. And I was the chair of the Republican side, and Jim Gartner, who is in the House of Representatives, was a Democrat on the Democrat side. And we worked together to build relationships. And that's what I think is key, to build bridges, not to burn bridges, and to work together because we knew we were going to be faced with some tremendous decisions that we would have to make regarding tax policy. Most of us were elected to do something about the Brownback era tax plan. And we knew that we were going to have to reach some agreements. And so from that perspective, the Women's Caucus actually was the one that probably did the most work on building those bridges to create that new tax policy. We had to override the governor's veto. We had to work together to try and figure out, because we couldn't override that first veto, why couldn't we? What was the issue? So the women got together, the R's and the D's, and we went into a conference room and we talked through what are the things that are absolutely non-negotiables for you? What can we agree upon? And that's where we began. And from that, we brought a date to a meeting, which would be a male colleague, and we kind of spread out like the ripple effect of working together to solve this huge issue of our tax structure to make it more fair and balanced. And from that, we crafted a tax policy that was voted on by every member of leadership in the House. So that's just one example, I think, of how we can work together as a legislature. You get to know one another, and you talk about things that that you're united on, that you can agree on. There will always be things we're going to disagree on, even within our own caucus. But you've got more things that unite you than divide you. Identify those, and you can work forward. And if you can do it in a civil and respectful manner, respecting everybody, whether they agree with you or not, they're representing their constituents. And so these are their values. You have to respect that, but know that you're going to try and change their mind. And I think I've been pretty successful with that.
Thank you. All right, Rachel?
Yeah, can you go ahead and repeat the question again?
Sure. How will you work across the aisle to solve challenges facing the legislature? And if applicable, how have you done this in the past?
Yeah, so most recently, I've been working for a small public affairs firm and doing some advocacy work and some lobbying at the State House. So as we work on our particular issues for our clients, we know to be successful, it's going to take a bipartisan effort, right? We've got to have folks from both parties, from all different viewpoints and values and that sort of thing. So it has given me, within these last 2 years, really boots on the ground experience and success and understanding of how that works and how to create a narrative and how to be relatable and provide information that maybe those folks don't on the other aisle, across the aisle, don't particularly have. And so, for me, when we're talking about companion animals, we can make those cases and make it a bipartisan argument that resonates with everyone. So I do have experience doing that and found it challenging but yet rewarding all at the same time. And I look forward to getting into the State House and doing more of that. I do, before we move on to the next question, I do want to just speak to my opponent's a voting record and maybe talk just a little bit about how maybe she hasn't been successful in creating these bipartisanship coalitions and participating in those bipartisan coalitions to really get things done that I believe hardworking Kansans right here in Senate District 20 need. Specifically, I'm talking about Medicaid expansion. And so the last couple of years, there's been bipartisan coalitions formed to get that passed and to see that come to fruition. And she's bailed on those in the times that we need it the most. And those bills have not been able to pass, and we still don't have Medicaid expansion. So like I said, I've got some boots on the ground experience, and I look forward to building those partnerships and relationships and working with everyone to make sure that I'm representing District 20 in the way that my hardworking Kansans want me to. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Rachel, you'll be next on this next one. What should the role of the state legislature be in fighting COVID-19, and how will you enact this in office?
Yeah, so I believe that Governor Kelly has done a great job at really reducing the spread of COVID-19. I know that my opponent has worked with her extreme party leaders to make that much more challenging for the governor and to reduce that spread and to keep Kansans healthy and to keep our economy healthy. So a couple of ways that I will work to really help us recover from COVID-19 starts with making sure that we've got a fair, common sense tax system that relieves these burdens, again, from hardworking Kansans and those senior citizens living on fixed incomes. I would specifically support things like the continuation of the Emergency Declaration Act that allows for those federal flow-through dollars to come to Kansas and to support small businesses that need it so much. I think we need to work on the bid process. We need to rewrite that so, again, we can support small businesses in their attempts to go after those large Kansas contracts. And we need to continue to find ways that really promote job growth, support small businesses, and again, relieve those burdens from those hardworking Kansans. We got to diversify our jobs that are available here. We need to find more that are knowledge-based, those degree requiring jobs, as well as find ways to bring in those jobs for the middle class. When we've got a good, diverse set of jobs that are available for Kansans, we'll keep our young people here, we'll keep them healthy and working and employed.
Thank you. Brenda?
Thank you very much. So I hope you will ask a question about Medicaid expansion. So
we'll get back to healthcare.
Okay. Have the opportunity to refute some of those ridiculous statements. So so the question about, what would the legislature's role be in combating COVID? We did pass an Emergency Management Act that went over to the Senate, and it was a clean bill, supported the governor completely and her emergency powers, and extended those emergency powers until January. One of the reasons I'm running for the Senate is because it got over to the Senate and just got chopped up and diced in so many ways. It came back to us in an unimaginable form. And so then, of course, in the legislative process, things have to go to conference committee. And when it's in conference committee, it got even a little bit more contentious with the agreements that were trying to be made on these emergency powers. So, from that then is the statute that we currently have, which can be problematic, but it did revert a lot of the authority back to local control. And so from that perspective, is that a perfect bill? No, it needs to be looked at. And we have an interim committee who's addressing that right now, and they'll bring recommendations back in January. So sometimes when you're in the legislature, you have to vote on things that you may not love, but there are pieces of it that are essential, and that's what happened with that bill. So the role of the legislature, I think, is to be able to meet our statutory obligations that we said we would. We need to fund our Emergency Management Act. We need to be able to provide the kinds of resources that our communities need, whether that's PPE equipment or testing resources, work with our public health officials. We need to look at the data, support the data. The economy, through every effort to be safe. The governor had to shut down the state and the schools, and that was the best decision that could be made at that point in time. But the consequences of that are that our economy has taken a huge hit. And so we need to find ways to get that economy thriving again, to work with our small businesses. I spent a lot of time this summer working with folks on unemployment insurance benefits and trying to navigate that system, and our small business owners trying to get the loans and the grants that were offered to them. So I think our role is to be able to provide our communities the tools that they need to be able to survive these kinds of pandemics, which are just, who would have thought? We had an Emergency Management Act that did not even speak to a health pandemic. And so I think we've learned a lot. We've learned what we can do better and what we must do better. So I think making sure that we pay attention to what our community's needs are and then find those resources to help them, because at the lowest level, the grassroots level, is our communities that will be the group that we will turn to find solutions. Sorry.
Yep, that's time. Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, so Brenda, you'll go first on this one as well. So what should be the legislature's funding priorities, and how should the state raise the revenue to pay for them?
Oh, that is such a great question, because of the economic decline that we've suffered through the last few months, certainly we're going to face a budget deficit, which is unfortunate because we had a surplus when we came back in 2019. And that surplus now will have been used through this whole crisis to fund our essential services. So that's the question I guess I would answer for you. We need to fund our obligations, and for that, I would say our constitutionally accepted school finance formula, which I was very glad passed Supreme Court muster. So we need to fund it adequately and equitably across our state. That is a constitutional responsibility. We also have essential services that we must fund: public safety, our retirement system, social services, all those safety net programs that our communities and our residents need, whether you live in the 20th or you live in the first. It's just extremely important. We're going to have to be frugal with our limited dollars. We know that. I've had to live through that as a school superintendent. We had 4 allotments, which were budget reductions in 1 year. And again, it wasn't the fault of a governor or a legislature. Is because we were in the Great Recession. And so we had to make some very tough decisions about our priorities as a school district. So we can lower costs, we can look at reform in all of our agencies. I don't think there's any agency that can't be innovative and be a player in this discussion as to what we can do to be more frugal and more efficient in the use of our state dollars. So the question was, how might you fund or find funds, a revenue stream to make up this deficit? One of the areas that we've looked at the last year in tax committee, might actually have been 2 years ago, was the internet sales tax, thinking that it would be a much fair option for our main street businesses, the brick and mortar businesses who are charged a sales tax on their goods and services, but yet internet sales tax, and the e-commerce folks are not. So I think we definitely need to take a look at that. I know that there are things that that folks will bring to us to take a look at that may or may not be something that our communities will tolerate. But I think internet sales tax is probably one of those things that folks are probably feeling would be acceptable at this point in time. We just have to have a mechanism to be able to do it and a structure to be able to do that. So we'll be looking at that going forward. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Did I miss anything?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, Rachel.
Thanks. Yeah, so I, of course, will work to ensure that all money that is being used appropriate within each agency for the various programs. I'll work to promote efficiencies and accountability and transparency. I know that there's lots of work going on behind the scenes right now, like the Council on Tax Reform is meeting and working and will come out with recommendations. So I look forward to analyzing those. And I will really support recommendations that responsibly reduce, again, that burden on the hardworking Kansans and promote job growth. We must continue down a path of fiscal responsibility. So I'm going to oppose any proposal to bring back Brownback era tax policies, and I'll protect critical investments for things like education and investments in the transportation plan, because it creates jobs right here in Kansas and protects our infrastructure. And again, just to find ways that really create and find efficiencies here in our state agencies. But my experiences as a nonprofit leader have taught me how to work on a shoestring budget, right? And still get a lot done. So I look forward to being able to apply that skill set in these situations.
Thank you. Okay, so Rachel, you'll be first on this one. How will you address the lack of broadband and healthcare access for all Kansans, and what legislative action should be taken to support rural communities?
Yeah, so of course, first step for me, this is the support of Medicaid, of expanding Medicaid. It would provide nearly 150,000 Kansans with access to affordable health care. It'll keep hospitals and clinics open. Medicaid expansion will also create jobs, right? When we need jobs the most right now, estimated 17,000 jobs. It'll infuse around $700 million into our economy. And lastly, the refusal to expand Medicaid has really resulted in the loss of about $4 billion of Kansas taxpayer dollars going to all those other states that have already expanded Medicaid. And so we need to get after that and expand Medicaid. Again, it'll keep hospitals and clinics open in those rural areas. We also just heard most recently that the governor has created a new agency with some of those federal dollars to help broadband internet access. And again, this is one of those first steps to making sure that we can promote job growth. We can have kids continuing to learn in these remote environments, no matter wherever they are in our state. So,
thank you. Brenda?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I would really like to applaud the governor for her latest distribution of dollars, $50 million to expand broadband and internet throughout our state. I think that's a critical piece to creating a thriving economy, to helping our students who are learning remotely from home. I mean, there are so many, the telehealth piece is critically important. We've got rural communities that don't have primary care physicians, they don't have mental health services. So I've talked to several of our community mental health center folks here in Topeka, and they're very pleased with the ability to be able to access telehealth to provide mental health services. So broadband is critical. It's amazing, you know, here we are in Topeka, Kansas, which is, a metropolitan area, and my school district, Auburn-Washburn School District, the small town of Auburn, which is in the 20th Senate District, there are many areas of Auburn, and we have an elementary school there, that have no internet access. And so that, I mean, here we are so close to a metropolitan area and you still can't access internet. That's wrong, just on so many levels. So I'm very excited. I think it also will add to the ability for us to attract new businesses into our state if we've got a solid internet corridor along I-70 and throughout our rural areas. So we can provide not only the access that you need for education, whether it's higher education or K-12, but you've also got opportunities in for telehealth and for jumpstarting our economy in innovative ways in some of our rural areas. So I'm very excited about that, very pleased at that. I think there's a lot more to do. I think our libraries and our hospitals, we need to make sure that we are providing the structures that they need to be able to do the work that they do and to access all areas of this state. There are 105 counties, of course, and the disparity between the haves and the have-nots when you look at internet accessibility is still kind of amazing in this day and age. So did I answer that question, or is there more to it?
Healthcare access and rural communities as well?
Yes, absolutely. Because I think telehealth has made a huge difference in their ability in the rural communities to be able to access those providers that they might not be able to see face to face. So, yes. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, Brenda, you'll be first on this one too. So what criminal justice reform is needed in our state, and what specific legislative action will you take to ensure that Black Lives Matter and poverty and homelessness are not criminalized?
That's a great question. 2 years ago, the legislature passed the Criminal Justice Reform Commission, or passed a bill creating the Criminal Justice Reform Commission. And that their work is just about done. And we're expecting a report to be generated from them in December of this year. And in that report will be many recommendations that we'll need to take a look at. I can't tell you what they are. I'm not on that commission, but I'm sure many of them have to do with sentencing guidelines, some of the things that we're hearing, in law enforcement. I know some folks are concerned about asset forfeiture, criminal asset forfeiture, and the sentencing guidelines for folks who maybe are caught with small amounts of marijuana or maybe abusing prescription drugs, but yet they're sent to jail and prisons, and that just becomes a vicious cycle that they can't get out of. And I've also heard there's been some discussion on bail bonding. I mean, there's just a number of things that I think they'll be taking a look at. And so I think that's very, very important. I also support, we were talking about Black Lives Matter. I've always said, yes, of course, all lives matter. We have got to be a more compassionate government. We have to take a look at our community policing efforts, and we need to be able to provide, I'm going to go back to providing resources. We need to provide resources to our law enforcement folks to make sure that they are trained and given the tools that they need to de-escalate situations. Sometimes, and I'm going to go back to mental health because I think that's maybe an overarching issue in some of these instances. Our police officers are not mental health experts. They need resources and assistance when they're coming upon domestic battery environments or homeless on the street. Our homeless population in Topeka is growing at a phenomenal rate. And we need to look for ways that we can help these folks and prevent them going down the path that might lead to a criminal record. And so I'm interested in what the Criminal Justice Reform Commission, what they'll bring us, what recommendations they'll bring us. We definitely need to address this. It's an ongoing issue. We hear it more and more, but we need sustainable reforms as well, and we need to be able to provide the resources that folks will need to be able to implement those recommendations. And that's the problem the legislature gets into sometimes. Great reports, great recommendations, everybody can agree, but then they just sit on the shelf and nothing happens. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us as legislators to not let that happen. We have got to move forward with recommendations that make sense, that we can implement. And I'm hoping we can support our communities, because I think when we're talking about Black Lives Matter and any of those issues, social justice issues with homelessness, yes, the state has a responsibility, but I think, and has a role to play, but I think the communities are the key to this. Community policing, how communities respond to homelessness, how they respond to law enforcement, the training piece, that all belongs, I think, at the community level. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you. I support Black Lives Matter. I don't believe that we should defund the police. I truly believe that this is not an us versus them situation. I believe that we must have a high standard for accountability and transparency for individual and systemic misconduct in our police departments. We must be innovative and implement evidence-based practices and invest in training that teaches high standards, requiring conflict resolution, de-escalation, and the appropriate use of force. We need to invest in community policing partnerships that focus on mental health, rehabilitation, and social justice. Furthermore, we need to break that school to prison pipeline and focus on prevention. Again, we need to invest in those evidence-based practices related to jobs, housing, education, and arts. Partnerships between the police and schools, social workers, mental health, and substance abuse counselors need to be the norm. So in my nonprofit experience in the educational nonprofit world, I had the opportunity to actually help create this really wonderful after-school program that combined after school with those kiddos that were involved in the system, that were on some sort of probation and in the system. And this opportunity in the after-school world really gave them a chance to understand and appreciate school, right? Normally these kiddos are stuck focusing on those primary classes, and so they don't have the opportunities to take electives. They don't have the opportunities to, you know, do welding and build sets for the plays and those sorts of things. So it gave them that space to work on their grades, but then also do all these extra things, these things that really are the reason why our young people like to go to school. It helps them see teachers in a different light. It also helps those educators see their students in a different light. It created those relationships and that hope for the future, right? This program also helps them earn community service hours. It gave them a half a credit back to school and helped them paid off their fines. So this was a win-win situation. And that's just one example of these community partnerships that we need to see implemented across the board, across the state. So with that, I would support appropriate funding for police, mental health providers, and community organizations to really make this vision a reality.
Thank you. Okay, so this one's kind of got a long explanation, so if I need to repeat it at some point, let me know. So we'll start with Rachel on this one. So in late 2019, early 2020, the Kansas City Star did a series of articles investigating the foster care to prison pipeline. They found that in Kansas, 1 in 3 inmates in state prison had been in the state's foster care system, removing children from their homes instead of prioritizing family preservation, multiple foster care placements, and homelessness after aging out of the system are just some of the problems these children face. What actions will you take in the legislature to address these issues?
So great question, long. I just want to process and make sure that I hit all the points here. So I'm going to start with, I believe Governor Kelly should be commended on the work that she's done with Secretary Howard to improve the foster care system. As a result of their work, the numbers are the lowest that they've been in 2 years. But I also believe that there still needs to be work. There's work that needs to be done. There continues to be too many children in the system, and conditions need to be improved. And I know things like affordable health care and good paying jobs and minimal barriers to those assistance programs provide stability for Kansas families and allows them to stay together. Just this session, 2020, Governor Kelly issued an ERO that would have combined 2 state agencies, and specifically that's DCF and the KDADS. And that was to increase governmental efficiencies and to help families have access to these services across the board to help them stay together. My opponent voted against Governor Kelly, and these families are hardworking Kansas families when she supported HR 6032, disapproving this ERO. My opponent also voted for a bill that discriminates against folks that want to adopt. And those things aren't helping us, and it's not helping the system. So I look forward to working with Governor Kelly to make these improvements and to make sure that these kids and these families have the ability to live their lives to the fullest. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda?
Thank you. I just have to remember to unmute. That's a great question. I was on the Children and Seniors Committee in the House for 2 years. That was really an eye-opening experience because we worked regularly with reports from DCF and from at the other end of that spectrum, the senior citizens in nursing homes. So it was really a most interesting committee. One of the recommendations that we looked at, which there is a bill, it has not made it through the House yet, but it made it out of committee, and it was to create, you ask, what will you do as a legislator? I would love to see this bill taken up in both chambers and passed. It's creating a new office called the Office of Child Advocate, not advocacy, Office of Child Advocate. And this would be a position, and it's modeled after one that I believe 13 other states have, and in particular, we've been looking at Minnesota. It provides independent oversight of DCF. It protects the well-being of our children, which I'm all about the kids. We've got to do a better job with this. And it provides reports and recommendations to lawmakers. It's an independent outside view of what's happening. I did vote against the EO to combine those two agencies, and I did it because I believe that creating a megalopolis, the world's largest agency, is of no service to anybody. The larger an agency gets, the harder it is to be held accountable. And part of the issue we've had is with DCF, and not under Governor Keller. She's done a very good job, and her Secretary of DCF is doing a great job. But it's so big, and especially when you fold in KDADs now, it just becomes unmanageable. And we need to be able to separate these things out, to be able to do the best job we possibly can, to see what their needs are in these agencies, and to then be able to provide the resources that they need to take care of our most at-risk kids. So for me, I think poverty is a big piece of this, certainly education. We have to keep these kids in school. As a superintendent, one of the most difficult issues we dealt with were kids who would come into our school district in foster care, stay for 6 weeks, and then leave. Their records wouldn't even be following them. And part of the reason is because of the technology platforms that our different agencies use. Their records might be in another state, but that agency can't provide those records to our state. And by the time our state gets them and filters them back out to the school district, that child's moved. And so that is something that we must address and must correct. We have issues with transition services for our 18 to 21-year-olds. I had a PRTF in my district, a psychiatric residential treatment facility, and we had a transition program that was run by the state. Those kids just fall through the cracks when they turn 18. We need transitional programs for them. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Brenda, you'll be first on this next one. So what actions should the legislature take to protect Kansans, our economy, and our environment from climate change? Yeah, sorry.
Okay. That's another very good question. I'm very appreciative of the fact that I think I read that Kansas is third in wind energy. So I think finding alternate forms of energy that leave less of a carbon footprint is probably one of the best things that we can do, and we have been working in that, or moving in that direction. You know, I think incentivizing companies who move into our state or want to expand in our state, energy companies, that they look to a more green footprint. You know, what can you do that will be the least disruptive to our land, our air, and our water? You know, water resources in Kansas are declining rapidly, and we've got a state water plan that we haven't really funded. And I think that's an area that we really need to take a look at. We need to look at the data. I mean, there is no doubt that we've got a climate that's changing, and that, you know, human beings are very responsible for that. So I think working with folks like Evergy in our area to reduce their footprint is a great first step, and making sure that we promote those things that we know are good for our climate and good for our natural resources. If we don't, I think we're going to be, you know, in a much more serious situation going forward with droughts and floods. I mean, think about the fires and floods and droughts that we're seeing across our own state over the last several years, and the fracking piece that's causing earthquakes. I mean, there are just so many things that we need to be responsive to and pay attention to. Was there another piece of that question? Could you just, have I got it? Okay.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Okay, Rachel.
Yeah, so absolutely. Our environmental policies have to be a priority for our state. We need to do some serious short-term and long-term planning. And this is a key part of my platform, and I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club, and I'm so proud of that. Our low temperatures continue to get warmer. Additionally, there's been this increase of what scientists call these extreme weather events, right? Like flash flooding and droughts. And because of our state being agriculture, extreme weather directly impacts Kansas livelihoods. So I am proud that we are leading the country in wind energy. But on the flip side, we've got a lot of work to do in a lot of other areas. Our state ranks 47th in the nation for installed solar. So we've got to start talking about these solutions that protect our water, our energy, our air, and our land resources. We need to take action. Governor Kelly had the right idea by issuing that ERO to move that energy office out of the Kansas Corporation Commission and make it its separate independent agency. The state needs an independent agency that is focused on implementing a data-driven vision for our energy future.
Thank you. All right, and then we're going to do our closing remarks. So any final thoughts you'd like to leave with voters? And we will start with Rachel for this one.
I can't believe it's time for closing.
I know.
I mean, it's just fast. Okay. All right. So anyway, thank you again for providing us this opportunity and the chance to really talk about policy. I want to stress again that I will bring a fresh perspective and an understanding of the struggles of the average hardworking Kansan who's in this district, because I'm living them too. So I'm going to support policies that relieve these burdens and make Kansas a better place to live, work, and raise a family. I've heard from a lot of people living in this district about their needs and their values and where they want our great state to go in the future. And I truly believe that my opponent's record does not support those. I will not support reckless, irresponsible tax policies like my opponent did, not once, not twice, but 3 times. These tax policies would have jeopardized school funding and would have eliminated all the progress that we have made in these past 2 years. We simply can't afford that. I will also fight to expand Medicaid. My opponent only supported it when she knew it wouldn't pass. She specifically voted against it in 2018. I'll work to ensure coverage for pre-existing conditions. I trust science, women, and doctors. I'll be an ally for women in the Senate. I will support teachers and bus drivers and education from early childhood to universities to colleges and technical schools. I will also work with Governor Kelly to keep Kansans safe and healthy, whereas my opponent worked with her extreme party leaders to make it harder for Governor Kelly to do her job and reduce the spread of COVID-19. So growing up on a small farm in central Kansas taught me the value of a day's hard work. I will always ask questions. I will always have I will always work hard as your senator. It would be an honor and a dream come true. I ask for your vote in November.
Thank you. Brenda?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you for hosting this, Women in Kansas. I do want to just say a couple of things. I voted affirmatively for Medicaid expansion 4 times. I have never voted against it. The bill that my opponent seems to keep reminding you of was a budget bill. We were trying to hold the Senate hostage by not approving a budget so that Medicaid expansion would be able to be debated in the Senate. And that's another reason I'm running for the Senate. We just weren't successful doing that. I have never voted for any tax policy that would harm education. I'm the vice chair of the Education Committee. I was instrumental in helping get the Brownback tax era tax policies repealed. So that's just laughable. So I'm just not going to go there anymore. I've been endorsed by KNEA. So I'm just going to go on and tell you that during my 4 years of service in the House, I've tried to focus on common sense solutions. I identify problems. I do my very best to solve them. I'm responsive. You call me, I'll call you back. Email me, I'll email you back. I just feel we have to work with everyone in a most respectful way, unlike my opponent today on this forum. I often think of Dwight Eisenhower. He said that, he loved highways. And he said when he was president, what is the most usable portion of the road. It's the middle of the road. If you go too far to the left or veer too far to the right, you're going to be in the ditch and you're never going to be able to get out of it and move forward. So I consider myself a centrist. I'm a bridge builder, not a bridge burner. And so I think that you need people like me who are willing to work with both sides, to hear both sides of an argument, and try and find a way that we can move forward. When you run a school district as large as mine with 6,000 students and 1,000 employees, you know you have to get things done. There's just no alternative. You're accountable to everyone, and that's what we are in the legislature. I believe we desperately need reasonable, rational legislators who can work with others to meet the challenges that we're going to face next session. I've walked all 96 precincts in the 20th Senate District, and I'm doing it over again. I did that in the primary. I won the primary. I'm doing it now in the Senate. I will work hard every single day for my constituents. I know how to build relationships. I can work across the aisle. I make people my top priority. And I've said this before, but I think there are more things that unite us than divide us. And I think legislators are the voices of Kansas. We have a daunting responsibility to make progress toward a better Kansas. So thank you again for hosting this forum. I'd very much appreciate your vote on November 3rd. But if you live in the 20th, but even if you don't vote for me, just vote. I mean, it's so critical that people exercise their right to vote. So please vote, and thank you.
Thank you so much. I will also echo that everyone needs to vote, please. And I would also like to thank both of you for joining me. And I also want to say thank you both for running for office. It's rare when we host forums that we get to have 2 women candidates in an election. So we really appreciate that. And good luck with all your campaigning work. And we will also be posting this forum on YouTube for access from Women for Kansas YouTube after the forum. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.